let's keep in mind, Daniel Penny is a big guy. He's strong. He's young. He's a former Marine. If he's on that subway and Jordan Neely comes in threatening people, probably the last person that's going to be the victim is Daniel Penny. He can hold his own. Daniel Penny stood up to protect people that maybe couldn't protect themselves, right. The women, the children. Also, if you look at the footage from that subway, a lot of those people in the subway were people of color. So you have a white man that's standing up to protect people of color in a subway, and yet BLM is so desperate for their grift and for their attention that they really want to make this about race.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? Today we have Tomi Lahren, and she is going to be taking BLM to task for its comments on the Daniel Penny case after he was acquitted of murder charges earlier today. They have gone exactly the way that you would have expected BLM to go, basically stating at one point that the KKK's job was being done by the city of New York, which is amazing if you want to think about it. So anyway, let's get into this as Tomi Lahren shreds BLM and its racist attacks on Daniel Penny. Oh, and hey, hit that subscribe button if you already haven't. I want to be at 500 subscribers by Christmas, and that depends on you, kind folks. So hit that subscribe button and let's have some fun.
I want to start with the Daniel Penny breaking news, if I can, with you, Tommy, because I've been sort of incandescent about this case, as I think you have from the start. The idea that a war hero is in his civilian life on a subway and watches a completely deranged lunatic threatening to kill people, and he apprehends him and prevents him from harming anybody. And in the
now, while all this is going on, okay, go and take a look at how Professor Von Hill, if I'm not getting his name right, I really don't care, how he reacts to some of the things that Piers Morgan or Tomi Lahren says. And you'll get the idea, okay, of why problems like this exist and are exacerbated to the state that they are.
The process, clearly, accidentally, didn't mean to do this. The guy falls unconscious and then he dies. And it's a tragic accident that happened, but it was entirely precipitated by this deranged lunatic going on a subway and threatening to kill people. A subway system, by the way, in New York, where people have been killed quite regularly in recent years. This guy is a hero, and yet he was treated like a criminal who should be thrown into jail for the rest of his life. Now, I think justice has been served, and he's been released, a free man, but with huge damage to his life, to his reputation, and so on. What do you make of this case?
Well, I'll also say damage to his reputation if he chooses to remain in New York City. If he comes to a great red state like the one I'm in right now, Tennessee or Texas or many other great states around this country, he'll be treated like the hero that he is. There's a lot I have.
So while Tomi Lahren shreds BLM for all this, you have to remember something. There was another person, and in the comments, please let me know what this guy's name is. I'll take a look at it and bring it up tomorrow, hopefully. And he was also arrested for defending other people, but he stabbed the offender to death. And he was actually let go by the New York City judicial system, but he happened to be black. So, yeah, while Tommy goes through this, you're going to see that, yeah, this is a racist attack by BLM.
Have to say on this, Piers, but I'd also say for those BLM grifters who are now coming out threatening to burn down the city, making this all about their race-baiting grift, how dare you, and shame on you. You did not care about Jordan Neely when he was a homeless man living on the streets, struggling with mental health problems and possibly a drug addiction. You didn't care about him then. You probably stepped over him on your way elsewhere. But now all of a sudden, when you can use his name and you can use his death to fundraise for BLM or to get out your pent-up aggression or to claim racism, now all of a sudden you care about someone like Jordan Neely.
And this is absolutely true. BLM only rears its ugly head when it has a chance to make a political statement and actually fundraise off of this. They have left many municipalities holding a paycheck of almost $1 million or so, not a paycheck, pardon me, a bill of more than millions of dollars, okay, and just fled because they say that they are a promotional organization and are not necessarily there to pay for everything, but they collect money and then run away laughing. So, yeah, this is pretty much just the grift that she says it is.
It's all too rich for me, peers. Expect to see New York City once again descend into mayhem and chaos because BLM needs attention. The pro-terrorist, anti-Semites, anti-Israel protesters have been taking all the wind out of their sails, getting all the attention. So now they want to be back in the headlines. But I don't think they're going to be met with the same sentiment that they had with George Floyd in 2020. People are sick and tired of this, and people know that Daniel Penny was a hero, is a hero, and should be treated like one.
Well, that's how I feel. A lot of people don't. Hawk Newsom, the founder of BLM in New York, has said that anyone who thinks Penny is innocent has racism in their heart before saying the KKK got another victory. Hypocrisy. Now, I want to play, before I go to you, Mark, I want to play, this is a clip of Jordan Neely's father talking about his reaction to the verdict.
I just want to say, I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now? I had enough of this. The system is rigged.
Okay, look, I feel for this man. I really do. I am a father myself, and I don't even want to think about what I'd be like in this man's position. But that little bit was a call to action, okay? And not a call to kind action, okay? Or the type of political or societal action to create change. No, he was actually preaching toward violence, and this is one of the main problems here. Piers Morgan is going to bring this up later, but, you know, I have to say, dude, where were you? Okay, if you were going to level all this against society and the system being rigged, where were you when your son was out on the street, okay, and insane?
Now, Mark, I'm sorry. Listen, I've got a lot of feeling for any father whose son dies in those circumstances. But the idea the system has been rigged over this, the idea that this guy, Jordan Neely, clearly mentally unwell, homeless, and potentially violent, nobody knew his propensity for violence. All they knew was he was acting in a very threatening way and threatening to kill people. And you have a guy who's from the military, who knows how to disarm people, who did exactly what he was trained to do. And then an accident occurred, and it's incredibly unfortunate. But he did not want to let this guy go in case he got up and carried out his threat. Are you really going to try and argue? I don't know if you are. I'm just pointing a question to you, really. But is this really the way it's being framed, as a victory for the KKK? That if you don't think this guy is guilty, you've got racism in your heart?
I don't think that that's the dominant position from people like myself who are critical of what happened and who are disappointed in the outcome of the trial. I think it's too simplistic to say that anybody who disagrees with me is a member of the KKK or has beliefs like the KKK. I think that becomes almost like a straw man argument. I think there are a few things that we need to talk about with regard to framing. The first thing is, as you pointed out, Piers, this man is mentally unwell. This person was struggling with mental illness. That's very different than the initial introduction to this segment that you gave, where you said he was a deranged lunatic. And as you repeated multiple times, deranged lunatic, it would communicate to the audience and to everyday people everywhere that the only way to stop this person from destroying the subway and killing everybody was to put him in a 6-minute chokehold.
But he was behaving.
Okay, this guy is going to be stressing 6-minute chokehold throughout this interview, and I'm going to get to him later. But, okay, having been trained in the same military that Daniel Penny was, I can tell you for a fact that after a couple minutes, when you have somebody in an actual chokehold, they're going to pass out, okay? It's a defense mechanism. Most predators will not continue to keep chewing on you or trying to kill you if they think that you are already dead. And it's a defense mechanism that the body has, as a matter of fact. So it actually takes a few more minutes of pressure while this person is unconscious to kill them. All right. Everybody says, everybody who witnessed this attack says this guy was still breathing when Daniel Penny released the hold that he had in when the police got there. Everybody does. And let's also remember that the medical examiner was caught lying about this case.
Like a deranged lunatic. Sorry, Mark, he was. I mean, it's indisputable. Nobody knew at the time what his mental health status was. All they knew was he was behaving. He was behaving in a lunatic manner, threatening and potentially dangerous. Nobody knew if he was armed. Nobody knew what he might do. People were terrified. So I'm afraid, for all intents and purposes, the guy was behaving like a deranged lunatic. It turns out, after the event, we discover he has mental illness. But let's not pretend that in the moment he wasn't acting like a deranged lunatic, because he was.
I wasn't.
People like this, academics like this, okay? And there is no more racist human being than an academic racist. Let me put it to you that way. He is going to portray this like there's always time to think about this, okay? And that's not necessarily the case. There's certain times where there's just no time to think, you must act. And this was one of them.
I wasn't saying that. You interrupted before I could finish the thought. You would understand I wasn't saying that. What I'm saying is that someone with a mental illness may or may not be violent. Most people with mental illnesses in public space, according to all the evidence, all the data, are not violent threats. And so I'm saying that we should not presume that they are. I don't have an issue with you saying.
But Mr. Neely at the time did present himself as a threat and was being violent.
Saying, hey, I'm going to subdue this person because I believe that they are unsafe for the particular context that we're in. What I take issue with is saying that I'm going to put them in a 6-minute chokehold because that's the only way to stop them from doing harm when we don't know that. And that's the additional piece of this.
Out of interest,
the second piece of this. The second piece of the Piers. Piers, you spoke uninterrupted, and so did the other guests. So let me finish the thought before you disagree with it, please.
Fair enough.
The second point here is I actually agree with, which is that there are systemic issues here. There's poverty, there's homelessness, there are all these things that a lot of the world does not pay attention to until there is a crisis. That's not a BLM issue, that's not a conservative issue, that's not a left or right issue. The fact of the matter is we ignore this. The failure of the system here is not what happened on that subway. It's the fact that a person with mental illness can go untreated, unsupported, and houseless without any support, and then we end up with situations like this.
Right, but for his father to be lecturing everybody in the way that he did, again, I don't have a lack of empathy for him losing his son, but the lecture that he gave, his son is wandering around as a homeless, mentally ill person on the subway threatening people. With all due respect to his father, where was his father in his life? I mean, is that a
His father wasn't there in his life, and that's probably what's going on. His father was not there in his life, okay? But his father is now going to be here now to be used as a tool by BLM, all right, and other political groups. And they're going to basically feed off of this man's agony. It's terrible.
reasonable question to ask? If that was one of my sons, I would feel an accountability and responsibility for the actions of one of my children. Would you?
I probably would, but I also don't think that that's the most important question. I may share with you the opinion. In fact, I do share with you the opinion that, hey, we should talk about family structures. We should talk about parenting. We should talk about fatherhood. But
that is the most important thing we should be talking about, because this is one of the biggest problems within the black community today. All right, you have 75% single family home rate. It's disgusting, is what it is, and it is a result of democratic leftist policies.
when a father's son is dead in this moment, we as a nation, just like with the healthcare issue, we have an opportunity to talk about the broader system instead of us criticizing how a mourning father is dealing with his dead son. Let's talk about the conditions that got us there. Let's not play a blame game.
But Tommy, I just sense that there's already a building momentum for this to be treated like a mini George Floyd situation. Now, I found the George Floyd story horrific. I thought what that police officer did was indefensible and appalling. But it's a completely different set of circumstances.
George Floyd was not murdered. Okay, there are 2 autopsies that say that he was not murdered and that he died of a drug overdose. Okay. Now, I'm not going to tell you that the cop was completely and utterly blameless. I think he had been taken off duty 15 times for behavioral problems, let's just say. And that's a problem with police unions and things like that. So I don't think that man should have been on the street, period. So I'll just leave that there, too.
This guy, Daniel Penny, he's a Marine veteran. He's on a subway and he's watching somebody directly threatening to kill people. And he apprehends him and he holds him down because he doesn't want him to be a threat to the lives of people around him. That used to be the kind of behavior that would win people medals for valor. Now you end up in a criminal court facing the rest of your life in a prison cell. And that's what I find so just, I can't understand it. How has society moved to punishing people like Daniel Penny for doing a good citizen's job, trying to protect people? I don't get it.
Well, you only can understand it if you're in Manhattan and you're in the mind of DA Alvin Bragg. There's a whole lot we can talk about there. Not a lot of things that office wants to prosecute outside of Donald Trump and Daniel Penny and other heroes. But
let's not say that they couldn't get the manslaughter charge, so they sent the jury home for the weekend to consider a lesser charge that he had not been charged with at the onset of the case. That is a dangerous precedent to set. And Alvin Bragg was doing everything he could to try to get a conviction on Daniel Penny. I mean, I got that wrong. On Daniel Penny.
But I would also say this, when we're talking about this case and Daniel Penny, and we're talking about the race element here, let's keep in mind, Daniel Penny is a big guy. He's strong. He's young. He's a former Marine. If he's on that subway and Jordan Neely comes in threatening people, probably the last person that's going to be the victim is Daniel Penny. He can hold his own. Daniel Penny stood up to protect people that maybe couldn't protect themselves, right. The women, the children. Also, if you look at the footage from that subway, a lot of those people in the subway were people of color. So you have a white man that's standing up to protect people of color in a subway, and yet BLM is so desperate for their grift and for their attention that they really want to make this about race. The way I see it is you have a Marine, who cares that he's white, standing up to protect people. He didn't care what color Neely was. He didn't care what color the people were around him. Yeah. He wanted to do the right thing.
I completely agree.
Well, there you have it, folks. There's Tomi Lahren having a grand old time putting BLM to task for its renewed interest in this case. Let's put it that way. So thank you all, everybody, for joining me today. This has been Tomi Lahren, SHREDS BLM, and its racist attacks on Daniel Penny. Join me again later. Thank you very much. Hit that like and subscribe button. Hit me with those comments. I do love those. Thank you all very much again. Later.